In this video, I'm going to be ranking every single creature in Scorched Earth Ascended. Now keep in mind this is a PvE list and not a PvP list, but anyway, let's get into it. In last place at number 11, I have the Vulture. I do like this creature, but it is easily the most useless out of all of these Scorched Earth exclusive creatures. It is a shoulder pet, and there's already a better shoulder pet that you would want to use over this one, the Jerboa, which of course we'll talk about later in this list. But I always do get a ton of comments defending this thing whenever I mention it. And one of the things people always say is it makes things spoil faster, so you can get spoiled meat in the early game. But the thing is, it doesn't do that. At least on Arc Ascended, it doesn't do that. As you can see, I tried putting my meat in there, and it doesn't even let you put meat in there. So I just had it harvest a body. But when I did, it still basically makes it spoil longer, or take longer to spoil. As you can see, it takes 2 hours in the Vulture's inventory, and in my inventory it takes 8, so it just works like every other creature in that regard. So that's not really an ability it has. And when it comes to the shoulder pet, people do also say that it can hit things off your shoulder, which could be a use, but I'd still rather use their Jerboa, and I think all the other creatures on this list have more uses. But after that, at number 10, I have the Moth, or the Lymantria. This one is an okay starter tame, and it is like a starter flyer, but it's not really that good, as it has insanely low stamina and insanely low weight, meaning that if you want to do basically anything, you can't really, because if you want to haul any resources or bring anything, you don't have enough weight for that, and the stamina makes it to where you can't really go that far. And it can't defend itself either. The only attack it has is that little fart bubble that doesn't really do much damage. It kind of just stuns things, which isn't the most useful thing if you're being killed. So I just don't find this one to be that useful. It's decent. Basically, if you just want to get from point A to point B in the early game and you don't have anything else, this is a decent way to do it. At number 9, I have the Phoenix. I wish I could put this one higher, as it's one of the coolest creatures in the game, but it's just not really that useful. First off, it's pretty much impossible to find. It's super rare. I've only seen one, and I've been playing this game for like 7 years. It only spawns during heat waves, and it's kind of hard to tame. It's not the hardest thing to tame in the world, but it is a little bit difficult, and it is certainly a late game tame. And if you're that late in the game, there's a lot better flyers like the Wyvern that you probably already have, or an RG or anything like that. This thing just isn't really able to compete with those things. It is pretty fast, I'll give it that, and it can poop out silica pearls, but I feel like it's easier just to go harvest them, especially on Scorched Earth. There's huge areas of silica pearls near like Red Obelisk and stuff. I can farm a ton of those super easily, so I don't really need to go out of my way to tame a Phoenix just to get silica pearls. I think it is a fun creature, but it's just not useful for how late game it is and how useless it is in the late game. And number 8 is the Jerboa. It's kind of hard to rank shoulder pets very high because, of course, a lot of the main creatures have more uses, but this is definitely the most useful shoulder pet on Scorched Earth, as that is the ability to warn you of upcoming weather events, which is obviously super useful because the weather events on Scorched Earth happen quite frequently, and they can be quite detrimental, so having a warning beforehand is very useful. And number 7 is the Thorny Dragon. This one is good early game and mid game because it is the only creature on Scorched Earth that can gather wood, which of course wood is a super useful resource and used in a lot of crafting recipes, so the wood you're getting is going to be super useful. The only problem with it is, of course, the chainsaw exists on this map too, which is a lot better way of getting wood, so late game this thing kind of becomes redundant, but I still think it's pretty good early game for getting wood, as well as it has a weight reduction on it too, which is pretty nice. Number 6 is the Rock Elemental. Now this one is probably way more useful for PvP, and this is about as high as I can rank it on a PvE list, but it still can be pretty useful. I mean, it is really strong. You can pretty much kill anything you need to with it. It can also harvest rocks, which is nice. You can use it like kill wyverns in the Wyvern Trench, which I haven't really used it that much personally for that, but I know it is a pretty good use of it, and it's just a really cool creature overall. So I think this is the highest spot I can give it, is number 6. At number 5, I have the Morellatops. This is one of the best starting creatures in the game. First off, it's a great travel mount, can go pretty fast. It also has the ability to drink water and store it in the hump, which of course on Scorched Earth, where you're running out of water every 5 seconds, is great to have because you can literally drink it from anywhere as long as you have this thing, as well as it can irrigate stuff as well. So you have a mobile source of a bunch of water, which is super useful, as well as it can actually defend itself pretty well, and you can kill a lot of stuff like raptors, wolves, terror birds, and all that stuff. You can defend yourself pretty well with it. Number 4 is the Fossilosuchus. This is one of the new creatures, and I think it is pretty good. The only problem with it is really difficult to tame, and is more of a late game creature, which I feel like it'd be a lot better in the mid game, but they have made it easier with the recent patch, making it to where you don't get dismounted every 5 seconds with it, so that is nice. It has some pretty cool abilities, like being able to swim in the sand, which is not something we haven't seen before, at least in the actual game. But then it also has the ability to get a bunch of flint as well if you're swimming in the sand, which is super useful. It's probably my favorite use of it because you can get tons of flint super fast. It can also sink things in the sand and pretty large creatures as well. It can sink them and deal a ton of damage. So overall, I think this thing is a pretty great creature. It's a great fighter, and you can harvest stuff with it. At number 3, I have the Oasis Sword. This one was a really hard one to try and rank, as on paper it is really overpowered, but the abilities of it aren't exactly insanely useful, especially in PvE. But first off, it can bring creatures back to life. Obviously that's pretty good, but it's only really good for creatures of sentimental value, as trying to bring creatures that you have like bred up already and bring them back to life, it'd just be easier to breed more of them rather than try and like bring them back to life with this thing. It can also make resources like passively, which is super useful, as you can just get these resources without even having to do anything other than just collect them, which is great. It also has the ability that I like, which is where you can put crop plots on them and it auto fertilizes them and gives them a greenhouse effect, which I don't like making fertilizers, so having the ability to just not have to fertilize it on the back of this thing is super useful. It also has that like pool or whatever where it gives you a buff, which is cool as well. And it can fly as well. This creature has a ton going for it, but it's also late game tame and kind of difficult to tame, making it not super useful, as well as you have to feed it like giant pots every time, and it takes a lot in order to feed it. So it can't really be number 1 or number 2 even, because of just how like impractical it is, but it is really good and has some crazy abilities. And at number 2, I have the Mantis. I wasn't really expecting this to be number 2 when I started making this list, but it does make sense after going over all its abilities. First off, it is really strong, and you can kill a bunch of stuff with it. You can put armor in its hand slot and on the saddle, so you can actually get a ton of armor with this thing, making it insanely resistant, as well as you could put weapons in its hand like swords and stuff to be able to kill stuff even faster. You can also harvest stuff with the Mantis as well, because it can harvest fiber, which is one of the few creatures to be able to do that, as well as you can put tools in its hand like picks to harvest stone and flint, or you could put hatchets to get more stone or wood, or pretty much whatever you want. You can do whatever tools you want in order to harvest it. People also talk about you can use clubs to knock stuff out as well, which is a nice touch. There's just so much you can do with the Mantis, and it's so versatile, making it one of the best creatures for Scorched Earth. But coming in at number 1 is the Wyvern. This is my favorite creature in the game, so obviously I was going to put it at number 1. But still, it is like one of the greatest creatures in Ark. It's a flying creature, it has tons of stamina, weight, damage. It's pretty much good overall at everything you need it to. You can use it for utility, as well as you can use it to kill anything on the map, as you're pretty much unkillable on the back of this thing, at least in PvE. You got the 3 different ones, like the lightning one and the poison and fire, with all their breath attacks, lightning probably being the strongest out of all of them. But it's just so good. You can kill pretty much anything you need to. It is great for utility and bringing stuff around. Overall, it's just one of the best creatures in the game and my personal favorite. But that is going to be it for this video. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe. It did really help me out, because I actually had to make this video twice, because when I was editing it, I had a glitch where it froze completely and deleted the entire video. And I had like 2 voice lines left. I was pretty much done with it, so I've had to make this video twice, which really sucks, but at least I managed to finish it in the end. But thanks for watching, and bye.